Hey everyone, this is another Booktube channel, and today I'll be talking about The Lies of Locke Lamora and both of its sequels in the Gentleman Bastards sequence. I'll be giving high-level overviews of each book in the series and avoiding major spoilers, but if you want to go into this series knowing absolutely nothing about it, I wouldn't recommend continuing here. The Gentleman Bastards series is written by Scott Lynch, with the first installment, The Lies of Locke Lamora, being published in 2006. Its sequel, Red Seas Under Red Skies, was published a year later in 2007, but the third book, The Republic of Thieves, wasn't published until 2013. There are plans for more books in the series. I believe Lynch wants to go up to 7, but he has been transparent in blog posts online that he's dealing with some mental health issues and anxiety, and that's causing delays in getting those future installments out. The Lies of Locke Lamora is the introduction to our main character, Locke Lamora, his best friend Jean, and their orphan gang of con artists, the Gentleman Bastards. Operating in the city of Camor, a kind of fantasy analog for Venice with its intricate waterways instead of roads, the Gentleman Bastards plan Ocean's 11-style cons to separate wealthy, unsuspecting targets from their gold. As part of Camor's underground of thieves, there's also a tightrope that the Gentleman Bastards need to walk to remain in the good graces of its vicious king, Kappa Barsavi. There's a coup, there's bloodshed, there's treachery. You'll have to read it to find out more. The Lies of Locke Lamora takes a little while to find its footing, but once it does, I think it's a riveting read. One of the bigger barriers I see people talk about with this book is Scott Lynch's choice to break up the present action with extended flashback sequences. Basically, we'll get a chapter of the modern day featuring the main plot, but then a chapter of Locke's childhood as a young orphan, learning the skills of the trade, and then back and forth throughout the novel. This is a risky decision, and I can absolutely see why some people would be put off by it. It's a choice Lynch also goes back to in future novels with diminishing returns. However, remaining focused on The Lies of Locke Lamora for now, I wasn't bothered by that choice at all, and I think it works pretty well here. Yes, it can be annoying to end a chapter with a cliffhanger and then go back in time in the next chapter, but I found both of those storylines to be interesting enough where I never became bored or frustrated. The real strength in this novel is the friendship between Locke and Jean, as well as the excitement of a well-executed heist. Throughout all three books, in fact, the anchor of the entire story is Locke and Jean supporting each other, squabbling, planning, and working together to outsmart their enemies. They're also very funny, and multiple times while reading this book, I found myself legitimately laughing out loud, which is very difficult to do in written media. I think it's actually the most difficult thing to do in writing books, is getting a sense of humor to come across, because, I mean, telling a joke requires timing, intent, inflection, and a bunch of other variables that are hard to control using only text. So if you can execute humor well, then you've done something truly impressive. I'm also a huge sucker for a clever heist and plans that require elaborate performances and have delayed payoffs, and that's a big part of The Lies of Locke Lamora. It's just great fun to watch these plans unfold and to try to pick up on dropped hints and guess where they're going with it, and most importantly, to have a conclusion to it all that is very satisfying. I enjoyed The Lies of Locke Lamora immensely, so I was very excited to get into its sequel, Red Seas Under Red Skies. Following the events of the first book, Locke and Jean find themselves outside of Camor on the island of Tal Varar, where they've taken up new identities as gamblers at a famous casino. Their success as gamblers has brought them to the attention of the island's Archon, just a type of leader, who, shall we say, has gently persuaded them to take a job for him in exchange for him allowing them to remain alive. Yes, Red Seas Under Red Skies is a pirate book, which I did not know if I was going to enjoy or not, because I've never delved into pirate novels before. As it turns out, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Once Locke and Jean take to the seas and start to learn from scratch how to operate and run a ship, Red Seas Under Red Skies is a crackling, dare I say, swashbuckling adventure. Unfortunately, it takes a little too long to get into that good pirate action. The first 100 pages or so of this book are really mired in excessive detail about the hierarchy and social structure of Tal Varar, which was not as interesting of a city as Camor. And to make things worse, all of those details are basically useless once the book heads out to sea, as the remainder of the novel focuses on that pirate action. So it all just kind of feels like a waste of time. However, Locke and Jean entering the pirate underworld is a ton of fun. As expected, the growing pains experienced by the pair are numerous and severe, ranging from hilarious to nerve-wracking. Unexpected deaths, mutinies, and even love throw wrinkles into their plans, and once again, the gentlemen bastards need to try to keep their heads above water, in this case, literally. While much more uneven than the first book, Red Seas Under Red Skies still delivers enough fun action and clever scheming to be a worthwhile read. Its ending is solid and brings the series to a very serious cliffhanger. If you were reading this series as they were coming out and you had to wait in real time for book 3, then you have my sympathies. This brings us to the third book in the series, The Republic of Thieves. After a 6-year break between books, Locke and Jean are back, and this time they are recruited by a magical order called the Bonds Magi to help rig an election in the city of Carthage. The rigging of the election is an annual tradition and a bit of a game, as the opposing political parties each bring in outside help to cheat their way to the top. The hook here is that the opposing party has brought in Locke's first and only love, Sabetha. Sabetha is mentioned here and there in the first 2 books in the series as a former member of the Gentlemen Bastards and as Locke's love interest who left Camor some years ago. Just like in The Lies of Locke Lamora, the action here is split between the past and the present. While the election plot happens in present day, the Republic of Thieves also features heavy flashbacks to the early days of the Gentlemen Bastards, in which our young heroes are given the task of going to another town and putting on a successful play for a very unsuccessful theatrical troupe. There are, of course, unforeseen complications that arise. The major problem with this book is that it is mostly flashbacks. The election plot here takes a significant backseat to the story of young Locke, Sabetha, and Jean and their theatrical venture, and it is to the detriment of the book. It's interesting enough, but it's nowhere near the level of the heists or schemes that we've seen in the previous books. Even when we are in the present day, the election rigging plotline isn't given as much importance as Locke's confusing feelings towards the return of Sabetha. He'll spend 1 page doing something related to the election, and then he'll spend 10 pages whining about his ex-girlfriend. When the election plot ends, it's abrupt and underwhelming, and gave me the sense that Lynch really didn't care much about it at all. It's okay if he wanted this to be more of an emotional book, focusing on Locke's past and relationship with Sabetha, but it just wasn't nearly as strong as Locke's relationship with Jean is to read, and it's nowhere near as exciting as the heists and the schemes. Jean also gets the short end of the stick in the Republic of Thieves after, to me, being a scene stealer in Red Seas Under Red Skies. There's just nothing creative or fun for him to be doing here in either the flashbacks or the present day. It's yet another reason that this third book feels sloppy and just incohesive. I mentioned the Bonds Magi in my description before, and I should stop here to note that there is magic in the Gentlemen Bastards world, but it's restricted to only this specific group of people. Locke and Jean do not have access to those magic powers, and their confrontations with magic users is a big part of the series, which I think is a pretty good idea. I like fantasy books where the main characters don't have access to the magic system, such as like The Burning by Evan Winter. It adds tension and forces the protagonist to come up with alternative, clever means to succeed. So where does all of this put the Gentlemen Bastards sequence in my estimation? Despite a very weak third entry, I would recommend at least reading The Lies of Locke Lamora to most people. Just prepare yourself for those abrupt flashback sequences and be ready for a grim, dark world. There is some shocking violence throughout the series, as well as pervasive bad language, so if that's not your thing, if you prefer more of a PG-13 style fantasy, I would skip The Gentlemen Bastards. But if you do enjoy series with high stakes heists, humor, and a terrific friendship at its heart, then you should give it a shot for at least the first 2 books. Even though the third book really disappointed me, when or if the fourth book ever comes out, I will still read it because that central friendship between Locke and Jean is so strong, and the excitement of those first two books was really great, and I think it earned me going at least one more book into the series. If you've read the Gentleman Bastard series, let me know if you agree or disagree with my assessments in the comments below. And if you haven't read it and you were unsure, did this video help you make a decision whether to read it or not? Let me know that too. Thank you for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.